The Australian Financial Review.
Facing your fears is never easy, but it can create opportunities.
I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about asking for help. All the people who win the gold medals, they have coaches every single day. And in business, it's perhaps not something that we think about so often, but why not? For what that particular lady did for me, she changed my life.
Welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success, failure, and the lessons learnt along the way. I'm your host, Sally Patton, and my guest today is Allison Rossiter, the country president for Novartis in Australia and New Zealand. Novartis is a global pharmaceutical company that produces medicines for diseases such as cancer, neurological disorders, and cardiovascular disease. Now, Alison, before we begin, I have to ask, have you always been interested in curing disease?
Not always, but I've worked in the industry for about 25 years. And for me, helping people is my biggest driver. It's what gets me out of bed every day and making a difference to people's lives. So I did work in diagnostics up until very recently. And diagnostics is testing, so blood testing, cancer testing, urine testing, and COVID testing, of course. I've now been with Novartis for just 8 weeks. Making a difference to people's lives and putting the patient at the centre of all we do is really what gets me out of bed every single day.
So why did you want to take on the role in Novartis in particular?
Because the people I'd met in the company throughout working with them in my diagnostics role, I just thought they were brilliant. I thought they were courageous. I thought they approached things in a different way to other companies I'd interacted with. I thought they were bold. I thought their mission was great to reimagine medicine. And everything about them, I just wanted to be a part of it.
Right, fantastic. Okay, we've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to start the clock right now. And my first question is about your morning routine. What time do you get up? What happens?
So I'm not really an early morning person. I get up around 6:15. The first thing I do is down a pint of water with a Barocca in there to give me some va-va-voom. And then my husband makes me a cup of peppermint tea and I have that in bed while I read through the trade press and the emails that have come in overnight and anything I urgently need to attend to. Then I get up, get showered, go to my Pilates class and then walk to work.
What do you like about Pilates?
I've only been doing it actually since January. And I like the fact that it's like the core strength. But yeah, it just makes me feel good.
Why did you take it up?
A friend of mine was interested in taking up Pilates. So we do ballet together. And she said, I think Pilates will really help our ballet. So we took it up in January. And I just celebrated the other day my 50th class.
Were you an avid ballet dancer when you were younger?
No, I wasn't. I never did ballet or danced in any way, shape or form. And then one morning it was a Saturday morning. I remember I was in bed having a cup of tea. I was just scrolling on my phone and there was a Facebook advert in Mosman, near where I live. And it said adult ballet dancers, beginners. And I thought, I'm going to give that a go. And now 5 years later, we've passed several exams. We do shows at Christmas in the Mosman Art Gallery. So it's fun. And I've met some amazing friends and women of all walks of life. It's been amazing.
Now, was there a pivotal moment in your career, something that happened, a project you undertook, which changed the trajectory of what you were doing?
It's actually two pivotal moments. The first one is I studied computing at university and I was an engineer for a Canadian company called Nortel Networks. And I joined as a graduate and I worked on different projects across the UK, across Europe, and I learned so much. And then after 2 years, I got made redundant. And I remember being so upset and thinking, what am I going to be? I wasn't married at the time. I'm nobody's wife. I'm nobody's mum. I'm not an engineer anymore. Like, what even am I? I'd lost my identity. And then at that time, all the jobs came up in the newspaper. The internet was quite new. And so on a Thursday was job day and I looked in and it was all medical rep. And I went to the doctors and I said, what do medical reps do? And so they gave me some business cards. And then I said, would it be okay if I shadowed you for a day? And they said, yeah, sure. And I went out with some of these medical reps and had such an amazing experience. I thought, I want to join this industry. So I applied to 2 companies and I was fortunate enough to be offered both roles. So going from an engineer in my jeans, like with a screwdriver, and now suddenly I'm in a suit and talking to a doctor like a peer, Oh, it was amazing. And talking about patience, I loved it. I really loved it.
And so what was the second pivotal moment?
The second pivotal moment was I'd just come back from maternity leave. At the time, I had 3 young boys, so I had twins. And I was in the UK and I literally got a tap on the shoulder. The managing director would like to see you in his office. And I thought, oh no, what have I done? And I walked up the stairs and I was shaking. I thought I was going to get fired. I thought, oh, I must have done something on my expenses. I just had this overwhelming feeling of guilt. And he said, Ali, I've been watching you. I like what you do. I like how you do it. And I would like you to join my leadership team to be the head of the point of care division for the UK and Ireland. I couldn't believe it. I felt like a fraud. I was jumping up the career ladder quite a considerable amount of steps. And I couldn't believe what was in front of me. And I drove to a hotel. I ordered a gin and tonic and I called my husband and I said, you're never going to guess what's happened. And he said, Ali, you've got to take it. You'll always regret it. And it was the best decision I've ever made in my life.
So did you consider not taking it?
I was so terrified of presenting and public speaking that I knew that the business area heads, of which this job was, would have to present at the sales meeting. And there was about 350 people. And I just thought, there's no way I can stand up and talk to 350 people. I was terrified. So when I went back to accept the role, I said to him, I would love to take it, thank you, but under one condition, you help me with my public speaking and ideally get me a coach. And he did, and the rest is history.
And how do you feel about public speaking now? Do you love it?
I love it. I really enjoy it. I still get nervous sometimes, but I think that's healthy. But I really enjoy it.
So what advice did the public speaking coach give you? How did they make you learn to love public speaking?
It was in preparation for a sales conference, the thing I was dreading the most. And we went to the venue when there was nobody else there. I stood on the stage where I was going to be presenting so I could feel it. And then she bought me, at the time it was DVDs, but she bought me a DVD of a guy called Paul McKenna, who's a hypnotist in the UK. And he was around getting confidence. So she said to me, listen to this DVD. So I did that. And it's about visualization. And then she said, your homework, because when I would be speaking on stage, if I was nervous, I would stammer. She said, your homework is to go to the cinema and watch the King's Speech. That was out at the time. And I watched the King's Speech and watched him terrified talking into a microphone and all that he went through. And she said, now he did it. Now think about that. So she was really methodical in her approach. She was really practical. And the tips stayed with me forever. And now I try and take deep breaths before I'm going to speak. I try and think about what I'm going to say, because if I don't think, then I do stammer. And I try to just not be nervous.
So would you encourage other people to request some learning and development or a coach if there is an area of the job where they think they might be weak in?
Oh, definitely. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about asking for help. You know, all the best sports people, all the people who win the gold medals, they have coaches every single day. And in business and as executives, it's perhaps not something that we think about so often, but why not? When the key athletes in the world have coaches who work with them morning, noon and night. And for what that particular lady did for me, and we've stayed friends actually across the years, she changed my life just by helping me tackle something that was one of my fears. And I know so many people who are afraid of public speaking. It's probably one of the biggest fears in the world. And you could unleash so much of your life just by tackling that.
Excellent advice. And speaking of which, tell me, Allison, what is the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
I think when you start in your career and you climb the ladder, so you want to be, in my case, a sales representative, and then a sales leader, a bigger territory leader, and then the director. That's all well and good. But actually, I think rather than it being a ladder, it should be more of a jungle gym. Sometimes taking lateral moves is just as important than going straight up the ladder. It gives you breadth. It allows you to see things differently, think differently, and come with more of an enterprise view so you can see the bigger picture.
So can you give me some examples of some lateral moves that you took?
Yeah, so when I was in the UK, I headed up a business, and then I moved to Canada after my UK stint, and I headed up It was really all the businesses, but I was in the same position in terms of my stature of where I reported into. So my position hadn't changed, but my responsibilities had changed. And so I went from leading one of the business areas to leading 5 of the business areas and being responsible for the sales across the Canadian organization. And so that helped me enormously, because as a result of that, then I proved myself in the role for 3.5 years. And I got a phone call. I'd been recommended by the head of the US to look at opportunities to be the global leader of products over in California.
Allison, stay where you are. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, you pick the questions. I'll see you soon. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Allison Rossiter, the country president of Novartis in Australia and New Zealand. Now, Allison, in front of you is this rather scruffy brown box, inside of which are about 15 questions. For this next section, please pick out a question one by one and we'll do some more Q&A. What are some no-nos when applying for a job?
You know, people have this idea that people embellish. And I think if you embellish and you don't tell the truth, then eventually it will trip you up. So I would say be honest. And people are recruited for who they are and what they bring. And we don't all have to be the same. And that's the beauty of diversity, actually, that we're all very different. And somebody may have tons of experience, somebody very little experience. Those together would be fantastic, because one side are very curious and challenging, the other know a lot of the answers. You know, so I think be honest of who you are, because you don't really know what they're looking for. You've read the job description, but maybe being true to yourself will pique the interest of the recruiter.
So when you're hiring somebody, do you pay more attention to the actual skills they've got or to the experience they've had and say what might be written on their resume? Or do you hone in on actually what skills can this person bring?
Skills they can bring, for sure. The qualification, providing they tick the box of the certain level that we require, I'm not so bothered. I'm more interested in what they've done, the experience they bring, and who they are as a person. I know once you only read the resume, you don't know who they are as a person. But once they've ticked that box of they've got the right experience, then for me, it's have they got the right attitude? Because you can teach people skills, but if they come with the wrong attitude, then it's very difficult.
So what would the wrong attitude be?
Not being curious, not willing to understand, not being flexible, not being willing to listen, to learn, to understand, to think you know better. By all means, add in ideas, add in suggestions, but listen to what's happening. The organisational history, I think, is really important, and being a team player.
So when you went for the job interview for Novartis, how did you prepare for that?
I was interested in the company for a long time. And so I did research the company, and I had done a little bit of work with the company from my diagnostics perspective, which is really what interested me, because I loved how they operated and I loved the people who I'd interacted with in the organisation. When I had the interviews, I had numerous interviews, and I would check out the person who was interviewing me. I'd look on LinkedIn, I'd look at their profile, I'd look for things that we had in common, maybe areas or countries that we'd worked in, or people, like mutual connections. And so that's how I best prepared. Then at least I could ask the person questions around things that I could understand too.
Okay, have another fish in the box. Are there any sacrifices that you've had to make in order to have pursued the career that you have?
Yes, absolutely there are. I said earlier about the importance of moving from one role to another and being uncomfortable. And in my career, I was in the UK for 12 years. Then I moved to Canada. Then I moved to California, and then I moved to Australia. And I say I, but it wasn't I. It was myself, my husband, and our 3 children. My husband was amazing. He decided, when I called him after the gin and tonic and said, what should I do? He decided to quit working, and he became a full-time dad. We had twins who were 2, and our eldest son was 4. And so we had 3 toddlers, really. And so he stopped being in a paid job and became a full-time dad for 15 years. While we moved around the world. And if he had not done that, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today. So I'm very proud of him and very honoured that he did that for me and for the kids as well.
So do you think that he was really crucial in enabling you to really take your career as far as you possibly can?
Oh, yes, 100%. If he had not been flexible and willing to step back from his career, I don't think it would have been possible to keep moving across the world with 3 young boys.
Right, okay. That's amazing. Thank you. Have another fish in the box. What part of your job don't you like?
Probably there's not enough time to be with people. There's so many meetings, and it's not this company. I think it's just life. There's meeting after meeting after meeting, and I'm back to back most days trying to dash out quickly to run to the bathroom or get a glass of water. There's not enough space to think and also be with colleagues and the team and peers, because you're always in a meeting. So that's probably the thing I don't like the most. I know it's important, we have to do it, but I wish we could do less of that and more of spending time talking, because often when you're face to face having a conversation, things come up that you wouldn't even have thought about in a meeting, from like the water cooler conversations, etc. I think they're really important.
So do you try and control the number of meetings you attend and how long they go for? Do you try and pare them back?
At the moment, no, because I'm just learning. So I'm just starting in the organisation. My calendar is pretty crazy, and I'm trying to understand the way the company works and the products and the processes. So there are a lot of meetings, and I understand that, and that's fine. But hopefully once I'm up to speed moving forward, I'd like to pare that back a little bit so I can have thinking time and time with the team.
Okay, have another fish in the box. What's your pet hate in the office?
My pet hate in the office, it's more of a way of working, but it's giving pre-reads too late. So people will send you through pre-reads for a meeting, and they'll send them at 10 o'clock for the meeting the next morning. And the pre-reads are not a page, they're typically pages, and then you don't have time to even read it, so you can't come prepared. So that's my pet hate, because I know the person's working really hard to try and get it finished, because they're probably in back-to-back meetings as well. So it's not a judgment, it's more of, out of respect for each other, I think we should give each other the time to absorb and to be able to contribute better to the meeting.
So do you give people guidelines or rules around how much time you want for the pre-read?
Yes, actually, I have.
Is it a rule or a guideline?
Well, a guideline, but ideally 3 days. If you can give someone 3 days, then they can fit that into their busy schedule and they can find time to read it, because it may not be the only pre-read that you have to do. There may be several.
Yeah, it's a good rule. I love that.
Yeah.
I've got one more question for you, Allison, which we ask all our guests, and that is, if for some reason you weren't doing what you're doing now, what do you think you would be doing?
If I could do any job in the world, I would love to be working at Taronga Zoo with the giraffes.
Oh, why the giraffes?
They're my favourite animal. They're just so beautiful. They're gentle. Certainly they appear gentle. I'm sure they're not if they need to be, but they appear gentle. And the fact they've got the long neck, I think they can stick their neck out and they can be courageous when they need to be. And I think they're just wonderful.
So on the issue of courageousness, would you say that you're courageous?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Have you always been courageous, or is it something you've learned along the way?
No, when I was a child, I was the most shy child ever. And then gradually over my life and things that have happened to me, my parents moved abroad when I was young, and I lived with my auntie, and then the different jobs across the world and different exposures, you get more and more confidence. And as a result of that, builds the courage.
I like that. Okay. On that note, our time has run out, but thank you, Allison, for allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss. It's been a delight.
Thank you, Sally. Take care.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you want to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com, and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced and edited by Iona Rennie. Head of audio is Alex Gow, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini. See you next week.
The Australian Financial Review.